it's Jade from shutupandrockon.com, and I know this week I've been a little out of my element. I gave you guys Suffocation earlier this week, which was my first death metal show, and now I'm at Destruction in Rochester, New York, and I have been lucky enough to sit down with Schmier from Destructions. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We had a great show last night in New York City, maybe the best one we had in many years, so looking forward to tonight, Friday night in Rochester.
Yeah. And how long have you been on this tour? How many dates have you done so far?
We had like almost 2 weeks. I think this is show number 11th or so, or 12th. I mean, we're here in America since a good 2 weeks, I think, yeah.
When was the last time you guys were here? Because I don't even remember.
We played Rochester not so long ago, I think, with Krejun, and that was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Last time we've been in the States was a Sepultura tour. It was 1.5 years ago, so it must be like 3 years ago.
So let's get into your history. So what makes you want to start doing music? When does that all start for you?
I'm like from the countryside of Germany, and it was very conservative, and you either could choose for football, which I did. I played football, like soccer. You call it.
I was going to say soccer.
Yeah. But I loved heavy metal, and for me it was a way to escape from this boring countryside routine. You know, it was conservative. A lot of Christians also, and for me heavy metal was like breaking out of that conform life, you know. And when we wrote the first songs and stuff, it was of course all evil lyrics, and because we wanted to be we wanted to provoke, basically, you know.
Is it weird writing all those evil, because you're a nice guy, you don't seem like an evil guy, so is it weird writing like that?
I think at the beginning when you start, the lyrics were just a part of horror movies, and we just were trying to express ourselves in an evil way because we didn't know what to write about. When you're young and you don't speak good English, I mean, we learned English at school for 4 or 5 years, but it wasn't enough to write good lyrics, you know. So once you come around the world, you meet people, you learn the language, then you start to rethink what you write. And that was like a little later, like for our third album, Eternal Devastation, we started to write lyrics about, you know, stuff that makes sense, you know. And the first years, of course, were kind of provoking. That was all. It was all about provoking. I never believed really in the devil, but I have a problem with religious beliefs. I don't know. I personally think religious is the devil, and I think that's actually the biggest problem we have. So that changed over the years. But it's normal when you're like, I was 16 when we founded the band, and you know, then you have a different view in the world, you know.
Yeah. And when I've always wondered, because bands overseas, all of them usually they write in English. Why is that? So you'll have a better chance at getting out there? Which is that why?
English is the language of rock and roll, you know. So the music we liked when we were little kids was all English music. There was no German bands that we liked that was singing German. Yeah. At that time there was no Rammstein or something, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
All the German music was very conservative at that time. Mm-hmm. So for us, English was also an international language of revolution, you know. Mm-hmm. So we never thought about singing German. I think it was never an option.
Yeah. And I know the band was originally named Night of Demon, is that right?
A little ridiculous, yeah.
A little ridiculous. So why do you change it to Destruction? Because, I like that a lot better.
Because I don't know, we had different members at the beginning, and when we started to change the sound of the band to more extreme metal, they kind of left, and then we said, now it's time to change the sound and add a name. And actually we were looking for something that describes what we wanted to do. We wanted to be most extreme, you know. At the time we wanted to be the fastest, loudest, and most brutal band, you know. So I think it was our drummer who came up with the name Destruction, for like sonic destruction, you know. And that's how we still see the band, as like sonic mayhem, you know, for normal ears, you know, because normal people are like, oh my God, what is this, you know, too fast, too loud, too crazy, and that's where the name Destruction comes from, basically. And back in the day, all the names were still free. Now, find a name for a heavy metal band.
It's impossible. Everyone is taken.
Everything is taken.
And like I mentioned when I was doing my intro, I went to my first like actual death metal show earlier this week and I saw Suffocation,
first,
my
that's
very
awesome.
first,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'm like a little girl and it kind of scares me. And I was with my dad and he took me.
Oh, your dad is like heavy metal fan?
Yeah, he's here. He's
Oh.
the reason why I'm doing this right now.
Cool.
And he took me, and it was insane. The crowd there, I've gone to like heavy metal shows, but nothing like that. And the crowd was going ballistic. How do you feel looking out into a crowd and just seeing people losing their minds?
I mean, heavy metal is, in most cases all over the world, one of the most peaceful events, like all the festivals or the shows we played in all those years.
Yeah.
You see little fights here and there, but basically on hundreds and hundreds of shows, people come to have a good time. People come to go crazy for a couple of hours and forget their daily routine, forget their daily problems, and therefore the shows are great. And basically heavy metal is also a big community. So when we play like Latin America or country,
They're crazy down there.
it's the circle pits.
Yeah.
The circle pits are so crazy, but people are always like helping each other out, and people fall down and
Yeah,
stuff.
you get picked back up.
But the energy is a main tool of heavy metal or extreme metal. So the energy from the crowd and the band together gives this amazing concert atmosphere. So I think it's very important that. For me, it's pretty boring when the crowd is out there and they're kind of enjoying the show, but they don't really act.
Mm-hmm.
If they give me energy, I give energy back, and that's the
Yeah.
whole circle. That's the way it works.
And let's talk about your first album, Infernal Overkill. How much time between when you started the band and that album was released? How much time was that?
I think when we were young, it seemed forever, but if you look back at history, it was very fast. We recorded our demo in '83,
Okay.
Sands of Death, the first mini album, '84, and right after we went to the studio, and also in '84 recorded Infernal Overkill that came out '85, and then '86 already Eternal Devastation came out. So we basically did the demo, the first album, or the mini album, the first album Infernal, and then Eternal, like everything in 3-4 years.
Yeah.
So because at that time the label had in the contract that once you signed, you have to produce an album every year.
Oh, yeah.
It was back in the day, it was kind of normal. So
Yeah.
nowadays, it's impossible to do that, but back in the day, it was normal.
And you were pretty young when this was happening, so how was it for you getting thrown into this band environment?
If I remember right, my mother had to sign my record deal. I think it was too young. I was I was 17, yeah. I was 17, and I think my mother signed it for me. And it was exciting because I was, as I said, from the countryside, and I never saw big cities, and we came to Berlin recording the first mini album, and it was already like a big impact to come such a huge city. And at the time, Berlin was also still in the east of Germany, but West Germany, so you had to go through East Germany to go into Berlin, and it was like crazy city for us at the time.
Yeah.
And of course, we had pretty early also, we played the first time in '85 already in Canada. And we did the tour with Slayer also in '85, so we had a lot of impressions that were maybe touched too much for us at the time. But of course, the more you can suck in when you're young, the better.
Yeah. And you guys are considered among the big four of German thrash metal. When would you say that you first kind of found success?
I think it came. I mean, what is success? Is success when?
What's success to you? When did you feel like
For many people, or for our Western world, success starts with money.
That's true.
So money came late for us. The first years were where the band started really good. We still didn't make any money because the pay was so little, and the contract deals were bad. So I think the band basically also broke up kind of in the '90s because of money problems. Because of too much expectations and not enough money, and at that time production of an album was still very expensive. So the last album, when I left the band, or when they kicked me out at 1989, it costed us so much money that it broke the band's back.
Okay, because I was going to ask you about that, because I know you go on in the '90s and you form Headhunter and stuff. So I didn't know what led to that actually.
Yeah, it was the business problems. Too much pressure from management. Then the record label having high expectations. The band didn't know where to go anymore. Everybody said, "Oh, you have to be the new Metallica of Germany," and blah blah. And then just a few friends just break in half, and they don't know where to go anymore. And that's what happened to us. And then we spent too much time in the studio discussing about stuff, and then they basically kicked me out because they said I'm the reason which was ridiculous because basically nobody didn't know where to go anymore, and the band changed their style and everything, you know. And I was the one that tried to stop it, and then I was the bad guy, you know. But that's history. Yeah. It happens, and you know, we all talked about it years later, and you were just too young to understand, you know. That's very often like this, you know. When you're young, you're lacking the experience, and then you listen to the wrong people, and shit happens.
Yeah, that's how it goes. And in the beginning of the band, you guys had one guitarist. Then there was two. Then there was one again. Why?
Yeah, I mean, the two guitarists were a nice challenge, because at that time we thought it would maybe bring something into the band, which it did, because Harry was a fantastic lead guitar player, but it also brought the problem that there was too many songwriters, and the direction of the band was getting diverse. Okay. So Harry wanted to write different songs than we used to have, and so we kind of lost a little bit of the direction at that time. And when we came back in 1999 with me as a singer, I said right away, I don't want two guitars, because for me two guitars means trouble, you know. I mean, meanwhile, I don't know, I think it wouldn't be bad for us, but I like actually the three-piece thing, because there's not so many. Yeah, exactly. Motorhead back in the day, and it's like not so many bands are out there anymore doing this three-piece, so it's kind of a challenge also. And of course, three people have to work more than five, you know. So it's always a nice challenge, and yeah, for that sometimes I'm like, it would be nice to have a second guitar, because you can do much more stuff. On the other side, I like the little punkish style, you know, when you just three people, it's basic and it's pure, and when you play good, it also sounds great live, because two guitars can be very messy live. Yeah. And Mike has a very distinctive picking style, so it sounds great live. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy as a three-piece, you know. It's more challenge, but also it's also better to share, you know.
It's
like,
worth it in your eyes.
Yeah, of
work
course.
A little harder.
And it's easier to make decisions, you know. The more people, the more trouble.
That's true. Yeah.
That's the problem sometimes.
Yeah, now tell me about Headhunter, which you formed while you're out of Destruction, because I tried researching it, but a lot of it was in German, and I'm not German, so I couldn't find out anything.
It also never got released in America, so the albums came out in Europe and in Asia, but never in the States. And yeah, it was kind of my continuing playing music, you know. I had nothing to lose, so I just formed another band, and I found some famous other musicians that did like 4 albums with me meanwhile, and it was important for me to not lose spirit and to not go in a day job, you know, because once you cut your hair, you have a day job.
You never cut the hair. That's the beginning.
Exactly, that's the beginning of the end, and that's what I kind of knew at that time. And so Headhunter was for me the thing to go through the 90s, which were very difficult because the grunge came, and beginning of the 90s was the beginning of the rise of death metal. So people wanted to have something more extreme. Then grunge came. So middle of 90s, metal was basically almost dead. Yeah. And at that time, I was happy that I could release some albums with Headhunter to stay in business somehow. So when Destruction came back in '99, I was still playing music, and I was fit for it. You know, even in all those years that I didn't do something with the band, I tried a lot of stuff. You know, I progressed as a musician also. So that really helped me to get back into the band also. If I would have stopped for 10 years, I wouldn't sit here maybe.
Out of practice and all that. And Headhunter released an album not 10 years ago. Another one.
I think 9. Yeah. Parasite of Society. It was 2008 or 9. Yeah.
And 2008.
Yeah, it was a nice little extra, you know, when you had the chance to do another album, we said, let's do it. And even though it wasn't so easy because all the other guys have different jobs, and I was full force doing Destruction at that time, but it was a nice challenge, like little hobby, you know. Sometimes you sit home and you write songs, and you know those songs don't fit with Destruction, so...
I hear a lot of people say that when they write songs that don't necessarily fit the band that they're in, but it works somewhere else.
Yeah. So, as I don't want to water out Destruction, you know, I want to keep them as a pure thrash band. That's why I did Headhunter, another album in 2009, and that's why I'm now doing this Panther project also. With like some other famous musician from former Accept and Hammerfall.
Oh, very cool.
And that's like more like pretty pure heavy metal, like 80s German heavy metal, between Accept and like Judas Priest, this kind of direction. And that's what I'm also working on this tour before finishing the album, The Panther. It's great fun to do something else beside my main love and my main job. You
It's
know?
another outlet for creativity.
Yeah,
and that kind of
it's
stuff.
it's a mixture of a hobby and also, you know, fulfilling your other ideas that you have.
And now let's talk about the latest Destruction album that came out, Under Attack, which was released a little over a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago.
Yeah, in May. And I read that it was recorded in 5 different locations. Tell me about why you would want to do that.
Was it really? I can't remember.
That's what I read in an interview.
I think
that you
we
did
actually.
with someone.
I think it was more like 5 different steps because we recorded in several studios. It's true. We recorded the drums somewhere else, and we recorded the guitars and the bass somewhere else, and we recorded all the overdubs and the vocals in the studio where we also mixed the album. And it's because we've been so much on tour that we didn't have the time to book like a studio for
Like,
several weeks. So we came home and recorded ideas. We went on tour, so we came back and forth a couple of times until we had all the demo songs ready, and then out with demos we produced finally the album, which was a great thing for me because when you come home from tour you bring some inspiration, you know, you have like
I can only
yeah,
imagine what
yeah,
you had on this whole thing.
exactly. So we try to bring this back into the songwriting, and it worked pretty well. And sometimes you sit down and you try to write, and you are forced to write, and nothing comes out, you know. So this time was like, we came home, we said, hey, let's do some new songs, and they worked really good. And it was a nice experience to record in several steps.
Yeah.
Because you always have something to hear, you can also work on it. And when you have recorded stuff, you will always want to change it at the end, you know. And
I've heard that a lot, yeah.
and that's why it was good for us to work on it in several steps, so we could change little details and be 100% satisfied when the album is done.
And you are 100% satisfied?
Yeah,
with
still,
the
yeah.
album? You like it?
Usually it's like when the album is over, a couple of months later, you're like, oh no, I don't like this song. I would change this, and
The nuances that you didn't hear when you actually
exactly.
recorded
And
it.
now I can still say when I listen to the album, I still like it. I think the production is more pure. That's what we wanted, and the songs sound great, and it's a good mix of the old style and our, you know, where we are now. You know, like as a band that has matured over the years.
Yeah, because you guys have matured, but you never necessarily evolved. And I was going to ask you, because you never really stray away from the classic sound that you hear on those first records.
It's a great advantage to have your own sound. You know, many bands are searching for their own sound, and they might never find it, and they have no identity. And we've always been very lucky that we found our sound very early, and we also lost track for a while in at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. But since we're back since '99, we're appreciated. You know, we're actually love to do this, and every album has still different little details, but the core is still pure thrash. And sometimes people ask me like, "Oh, the album sounds the same. It's thrash." Yeah, I mean, what do you expect me to do? As Destruction,
you're
you
not
know?
going to go out and do
Should I do a
completely
progressive blues album?
Which some
you know?
bands do. Like
Yeah,
some bands really completely
exactly.
switch directions.
And then what usually happens is the fans hate it.
Yeah.
And then
Splits
and then the band splits up, and the record label kicks you off the label, you know. And so it's stupid, you know. You should do what you can do best, and that's for us as Destruction. It's pure thrash, and that will never change.
Yeah. And now tell me what you're up to now, because I read that you guys are working on something new, Thrash Anthems 2, I think, that should be coming out.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a best of
Yeah.
re-recorded classics. It's because we have been doing like bonus tracks in the last years, like re-recording of old song, and a lot of fans always ask us, "Oh, can you do more of this?" Because they like the old songs with like a fresh new sound.
Yeah.
And that's why we did the Thrash Anthems album, but it comes out first only as a pledge campaign. It means
saw that,
the people are pledging for the album, they support us to record the album this way because we talked to the label first, and they weren't so thrilled about a best of album because nowadays best of albums, they don't sell so well anymore, and this idea of re-recording also had like a bad name for some years, and so it didn't really work out. Oh, ice. Need some help? It's a little. I think it's enough for here. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
And we said let's do it alone. And now that the album is finished and Nuclear Blast heard it, they're like, oh, we want to have it, you know. But
of course, now they heard it.
but first of all, it's going to come out for the Pledge people. That means the summer. All the people, I think the Pledge goes still on for another 25 days or so. So you can still get the album.
Okay.
And then this will be your first edition, 150 vinyls only, and only a couple of hundred CDs, like maximum we're going to do maybe 800 to 1,000 CDs. And later on at the end of the year, Nuclear Blast might re-release the album with a different cover, maybe a little different extras. We don't know yet. We have to talk about it. But for now, it will be maybe the most rare Destruction album in history because we do such a limited edition of the first issue.
So that means I have to go get it, like right now.
I mean, I would say if you're a real fan, and also it's great because you get those old classics in a total new sound.
Yeah.
And it was also challenging for us to re-record them again because some of the songs you didn't remember much, you know, and even some of the lyrics, they didn't exist on paper anymore. So
you got to go back and try and figure.
So I had to recreate the lyrics somehow and listen to them. And at the very end, our very old drummer found some original lyric sheets again.
Oh, wow.
And then I finally got the lyrics. I'm like, oh my God, what was I singing? And I had to re-sing some parts also.
Mm-hmm. You're like, what was that like for you, going back and remembering all this stuff that you did when you were my age?
Sometimes it's actually great because I could also see the progress in my vocal skills that on the first two albums. The demo was like totally I didn't understand the word. The first album was difficult, but on Eternal Devastation, you could tell we worked on the vocals on my English, so you could understand what I'm singing on that album. So it was pretty easy to recreate some of those songs. But on Infernal Overkill, there's some, I don't know how you call it in English when somebody talks like through the nose, like
nasally.
Nasally.
Yeah.
I was very nasally at the time, and I was like this, and I don't really understand what I was saying, you know, and then it was difficult to recreate some stuff. But also it was very funny because it obviously brings quite a lot of memories, and like when you just play the songs live, the old ones, it's not the same as when you re-record them. You know, when you re-record them, you really dive into the songs again, and you try to recreate the spirit, and that was actually very cool.
Mm-hmm. And do you want to do another original album soon? Is that something you want to do?
Yeah, we will, but there's no super pressure. You know, it's not like back in the day that every year
you have to have it.
That there's somebody with a whip is here and it's like, shh. No, it's actually we're gonna be inspired again. I just did this Panzer record, you know, this heavy metal album. And I've been doing the Destruction album also, so I've been in the studio for the last 2 months, basically, in and out, and we played festivals, so I was going to the studio again. So I was kind of very busy, so I don't feel like writing new songs for Destruction right now. We want to enjoy this tour. We're gonna go to Asia and to Australia and to Russia, and so it's gonna be a lot more shows. And then I think beginning of next year or so, when we're back home, we're gonna start sitting down and look at the world and see
what the hell is
what's going on exactly. Is Donald still there and stuff, you know? So yeah, I think it's gonna be no stress for the songwriting. That's what we learned in the last years. If we take our time, the albums get better. If we rush ourselves, it's not that good, you know.
And before I let you go, I have to ask, guys, Schmier has the bridge of his nose pierced, and I just need to know how bad that hurt.
No, it didn't hurt.
It did?
No.
I don't.
No, it's like an earring. It's like, psh.
I don't believe that.
No, it didn't hurt. Really.
Okay. When did you get that pierced?
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
I think, oh my God, 15, 20 years ago. Already.
Okay.
Yeah. I think something like that. Let me think. I think actually I had a spike here before,
Right.
and a lip ring,
Uh-huh.
and when I took that out,
Okay.
I think. Then I did this. Yeah, it was like kind of a, change of piercing.
With the old.
So I think but I think it was like 2003 or so. So it's like 15 years.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.